Audio testing, 1, 2, 3. Lights on, camera rolling, and action.
Welcome to the Scaling Creator Podcast, the one-stop shop that explores problems, solutions, and stories for business-minded creators. I'm Soren Dickens.
And I'm Eriksen Dickens.
We'll be talking about everything from self-discovery, storytelling, leadership, marketing, sales, operations, and finance.
If you like a healthy dose of education mixed with a generous dash of insightful entertainment, prepare for your ears to be pleasured. Oh yeah.
Make sure to check us out at scalingcreator.com and also join our free Discord community.
Scaling Creator launching in 3, 2, 1.
The following content is not intended for all listeners, but we strongly encourage all listeners to listen regardless. All right, welcome back to the Scaling Creator Podcast. I'm Soren Dickens. I'm here with Eriksen Dickens. We're here in the production van. And today we're going to be talking about a recent trip we made to the Philippines for our business, Platinum Peak Productions. And we're going to be talking about why we went to the Philippines and, most importantly, the lessons we learned along the way about ourselves, America's involvement in globalism, and our perspective on where the future is headed for the world. You know, there's a lot of talk right now going on in the United States about the future of the United States, this whole concept of de-dollarization, where people around the world, different countries, are pulling away from using the dollar in international trade. I think a lot of the United States should really be talking about where the United States stands in the world's economy and also do their research before they make any assumption or judgment about the doomsday scenario that I think a lot of people are fearing. So yeah, we went to the Philippines in May of 2023. We went out there to meet up with our team members at Platinum Peak. We have remote workers, both in the roles of project management and editors, and we wanted to get a feel for their culture, understand the way that they lived, understand the way that they were raised, and also dive into the history of that country because the Philippines has a lot of history that's tied to the United States. It's important as someone who lives in the United States to understand the history of the United States and their involvement around the world. I do really believe that.
You know, we talked a few episodes back, I think it was episode 5, about how we scaled and how we got from a 2-man team to a company that's serving clients around the country. But we didn't dive too deep into the specifics of that machine that actually helped build this company. And going to the Philippines, we've traveled a lot for work, for jobs and whatnot, but going to the Philippines was a totally different type of trip because it really helped solidify the trajectory that we're on today as a company. Like Soren just mentioned, we have a good amount of team members that are from the Philippines.
It's one thing to communicate with team members through Slack or through Zoom, but going and seeing them face to face and getting to know them on a more personal level, getting to know their culture, you know, what they like, what they dislike, it's a totally different vibe, right? And some of these people have been working with us for, 3 or 4 years at this point. We had talked about doing this trip for a while, right? I mean, we'd kind of throw the idea around. Are we actually going to do it? I don't know. But slowly it evolved to something that, yeah, we're actually going to go do this. We want to meet these people. They've dedicated a lot of time and energy to us, and we want to go see them and meet them in person. So we did it. And it was a once in a lifetime trip, and we learned a lot. And gosh, I can't believe that was already, 4 months ago now?
Yeah, it was conversation that we started to have in the beginning of 2023, and we didn't even have the logistics figured out in terms of how things were going to go. At the time, you didn't even have a passport because...
Right. I got it stolen in Costa Rica. Yeah, greatest trip ever.
So we had to rush the passport, which is...
Oh, that was such a pain in the ass.
Oh my goodness.
God. We had to drive to San Francisco. Keep in mind, the trip was right around the corner. I had to drive to San Francisco and same day appointment, right? So submit all my paperwork there. And keep in mind, this building in San Francisco is not exactly easy to get to. And there's literal crackheads everywhere surrounding it. It's like 7 a.m. appointment. We go there. We're all stressed and freaking out because we leave later that same day. Long story short, eventually I got the passport, but I remember just stressing and the anxiety because I wanted to go on this trip. And it's like, okay, if there's one little hiccup, who knows? Maybe I can't actually get on the plane because I don't have a damn passport. But eventually, yeah, we got the passport, got to the airport, and then we were on our merry way. Let's talk a little bit about why the Philippines? You know, you see that more and more in terms of American companies working with Filipino people. How did we go down that path? And how did we decide that, yeah, you know what, the Philippines, they have a certain type of people that we like working with and think that they can complement our company in a positive way. So why the Philippines?
So a couple of years ago, being online, doing business online, there was a conversation around people who were working with virtual assistants in the Philippines. And it caught my eye, caught my ear. I realized that these businesses who were operating completely remotely were able to source highly qualified, very skilled talent in the Philippines specifically, in other markets that English was either one of their first or their second languages. It was being taught in their schools. So I saw the opportunity to look at the Philippines and say, what can we do to work with people in the Philippines beyond these virtual assistant roles? It bothers me a lot, actually, when people hear that we have team members in the Philippines and they immediately think that they're virtual assistants. We don't have a single virtual assistant on our team. Everyone on our team is
A key player.
A key player. They're in a position that's highly skilled and also requires a level of skill developed beyond what a VA could do. That's always a conversation that comes up when we're talking about the Philippines. So yeah, the people in the Philippines, they've been able to equip themselves with skills that are extremely valuable to companies in the United States, United Kingdom, Australia, Canada, and even really around the world. They have a really big impact on Dubai's economy, and Dubai is a really strong economy out in the Middle East. So when you look at the Philippines and the value that they bring to companies, it's really incredible to see their contribution to so many successful companies in the United States. And I think that we're going to continue working there. And I think that the future of a country similar to the Philippines, a country that was indoctrinated into the English language, the business language around the world, is really going to have a bright future.
And it's kind of a double-edged sword, right? When you look at the history of the Philippines, that country has gone through a lot, right? They were under colonial rule for like 400 years. You know, they were exploited, Spain, then America, and then Japan during World War II. So a lot of their culture was lost, and it's a really unfortunate thing. A lot of human rights abuse, just cultural erosion in general, a loss of sovereignty and independence, and that's horrible. But being a realist and being objective about it, there's also, God, I don't even want to go as far and say that there's pros, but there are, in terms of the fact that because of the influence that, you know, came from that, America was there. That's why they were able to learn English better than the majority of a lot of other Asian countries. They were westernized to an extent. So I think that if you look at the history of the Philippines, it's tragic. But at the same time, it almost, oddly enough, set them up in a way to where now they are producing a workforce, producing people in general that are well-rounded, well-cultured. I mean, a lot of them speak Spanish too, right?
Right.
You know, English, they speak their native language, and they're very in touch with the way that the Western world works, and that equips them to be able to complement a lot of businesses in, you know, America, in other, like you said, Australia.
Do you think that it's in the grand scheme of things? There's obviously a lot of conversation around the United States involvement in other countries and bringing their Western culture and, you know, indoctrinating these different communities in the English language. Do you think that in the long run, it's actually helping these countries in terms of giving them opportunities to pull themselves from a country that is maybe in poverty to a country that actually has a middle class? How do we navigate that as U.S. citizens in a global economy?
It's hard to just give that a blanket yes answer just based off what we know about the history and how, you know, colonialism like impacts their culture in such a devastating way. But at the same time, it does set them up to an extent to be able to almost reach a certain growth that maybe they wouldn't have, you know, all these years later, right? Let's talk a little bit about the fact, like, in America, it's a lot harder to elevate yourself financially, right? If you're born in the lower class, it's very, very, very difficult to advance yourself up to the middle class and then upper class, etc. How is that different when it comes to a more developing country like the Philippines? Is it easier? Is it more difficult? And what's America's role in that?
That's a really good question. The narrative in the United States is built around this concept of American dream. And when you look at the way that the American dream was portrayed to Americans developing their careers, Americans that were building within the United States, it really was during a time where there was a lot more opportunity for growth. The ceiling was a lot higher than where we're currently sitting. The ceiling in the United States for a massive growth is a lot lower to where the current status quo is here in the United States, where in these emerging economies, you could go from making $10 an hour to $40 an hour in a position where in the United States, your entry rate hourly, or whether that's your salary, is really open for about a 40 to 60% growth. Whereas in the Philippines, you can take someone from $10 an hour to $40 an hour in a position where they maybe develop 3 to 5 years of a skill set. Maybe after they reach that point of where they're making $40 an hour and they're in a management role, they're living like an absolute king or queen in the Philippines, where the management, or where the average person is making a lot less than that, because they're able to tap into another market. And in our case, it's the United States. And then that transaction also brings a lot of value to the United States and our local economy, because we're working with companies here in the United States, and you're able to give and take. And it's difficult, but it's less difficult as a small business to really see the impacts on like a global level. We're kind of able to build those relationships and see people's lives being changed by being able to pay them and ascend them through like a pay or a rate ladder. In terms of like the United States' long-term play in these different markets, I think that these markets are going to become self-sustaining when their middle class rises up and their poverty class rises up into like lower class, and we see a big transformation in the general abilities of their working class.
How do you respond to the term exploitation, right? So the Philippines was a country that was exploited, like a lot of other countries, exploited for years for their resources, for their manpower. And, you know, we've heard from old head businesses in America, people we've talked to, and sometimes we get a certain type of a look or a comment, right? Oh, okay, so you just outsource all your work, lower cost, right? Just, okay, you're exploiting them. That's basically what they're kind of saying, right? We've had a few of those conversations back here in the States with people. What would your response be to that?
Well, I think history has set us up for a difficult situation, right? There have been plenty of cases where companies have been exploiting work or dealing with different markets in a way which doesn't really settle well with this global economy that we're playing in now, because people remember the past, right? Whenever you get involved working with another culture or someone in another country, you have to try and understand where they're at, what they know of people from your country, and things in that regard. But the average income of a Filipino, just to put things into perspective, is $3,900 annually. That's according to some scholar site. I don't know. But the $3,900 that a Filipino makes on average is not taking into consideration the flexible work hours, the work-life balance, and the opportunity to professional growth in a Western capitalist market that businesses in the United States provide for people in the Philippines.
Right. And it's also one of the biggest industries in the Philippines alone, the business process outsourcing industry.
That's right. Yeah, the BPO industry in the Philippines, it's actually one of the largest in the world coming out of the Philippines. People don't really know this about American companies, but many American companies outsource tasks to the Philippines, such as customer service, data entry, IT services. And what's really interesting, when we were in the Philippines,
Right, yeah.
this gal who works for us, she lives in the Philippines. She's been working for us for about 6 months at this point. She sat down with us at dinner one night and started to tell us about her experience working for a major American corporation. And we all know that when you call centers, you don't want to be talking to the person on the other end. You know that they're from, another country, and you immediately have this internal bias thinking, oh, this person is just so doesn't understand what I'm trying to deal with here. They don't understand what I'm trying to get to with this business. But when you sit down and have a conversation with the person who's on the other end of the phone, you hear their end of the story, and you realize that most of the time when people here in the United States get on the phone with a customer service representative in the Philippines, they're agitated, they're aggressive, they just want to be finished and have the solution. And really, they're just not taking into consideration what bandwidth that company has, and how having a call center, regardless of where the people are, you are talking to another human who has a life,
right? A family,
yeah. And they have a story, and that story ends up getting back to people like us, and we hear, holy cow, I know exactly who you're talking about. These people get on the phone with you guys and think they're, kings or queens, and you guys are their servants. And the reality is, it's not. You can't do that,
Right.
because we're living in a time where these emerging economies, these people, they live lives comparable to us, just in a different country.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a great point. And, it rubs me the wrong way personally, because when you hear that kind of stigma around hiring people from overseas, right, it bothers me because there's automatically this kind of indirect comment basically saying, well, it's obviously not going to be as good because it's not done here in the good old USA. And one thing we've learned throughout this process is, no, actually, it's going to be just as good, if not better, in a lot of ways. And it's just insulting because it's like, these are people that have also dedicated their lives to their craft. And it rubs me the wrong way when I hear that a lot, because like I've said earlier, it's like we wouldn't be where we're at today without the hard work, the creativity, the ingenuity of the people that work for us. And yeah, they are in a developing country. They don't have all the resources that we do. But at the same time, their output levels have helped us scale. And, I'll be honest, like there's a different like hunger in a lot of these other countries, the Philippines included. Here in America, it's like people they just feel entitled to, automatically getting out of college an $80,000 salary. They feel entitled to that, right? They feel, oh, well, they're an American, they got a business, college, whatever. So automatically their value is worth more than, a country like the Philippines, who outsources from the Philippines, right? What do they know down there? And that's one thing I think that we've learned throughout the process of working with people from the Philippines is like, no, it's like, it's that's not the case, right? It doesn't matter if you're from a country like the Philippines or, India, wherever it's at. It's like they have people there that are just as competent and they'll work harder probably on average, let's be real.
Their ceiling is a lot higher than ours.
Yeah.
Their potential for where they could cap and still maintain a normal lifestyle is a lot higher than here in the United States, because India, it's a different conversation, but in a country like the Philippines, the regulations and laws between the Philippines and the United States are fairly loose in that they allow people within the Philippines to contract and to be employed by people in much larger economies. And unfortunately, a lot of the world doesn't have that luxury.
Being in America, a lot of people who haven't traveled in general, they heard we were going to the Philippines, right? And automatically there's just kind of like, oh, are you going to be safe? Are you going to make it back okay? It's just kind of funny. It's like, I remember when we got back from the trip, one of our friends was like, I'm just like happy you guys made it back alive.
Yeah.
Right. I think that goes in just like expectations, and in America especially, they automatically view countries that may not be up to their standards in terms of certain things. They automatically poo-poo it in a way. And it's like, it's automatically dangerous. And I think it's really important to keep an open mind and actually want to learn about them, as opposed to just thinking that they're a certain way and having a preconceived expectation for how something is. Because in a lot of ways, when we went, it's like we were blown away with a lot of the stuff they had. I'm guilty of it. I had some preconceived expectations on the Philippines before I went. And in so many ways, I was just like, wow, this is like, people in America, if they just open their minds a little bit, they would be blown away. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. We went to the Philippines thinking one thing, came back with a different perspective. And I don't know where that indoctrination has come from. I don't remember back in high school or in world history really hearing a lot about the Philippines. For some reason, there's this conversation in the United States that it's this underdeveloped country. And I think a lot of that...
It's all a big village.
It's all a big village. And there are villages in the Philippines. And there are still tribes, just as there are tribes within the United States living on reservations, just as there are tribes in the Amazon living amongst the Amazon, there are tribes in the Philippines. But on the flip side of it, there are also some of the most technologically advanced systems that I've ever seen. Like there was this toilet at one of the hotels that we stayed at.
Nicest hotel I've ever stayed at.
It was so sweet. It was like futuristic. It had a massive shopping mall. Probably had
80 restaurants.
80 restaurants. I don't even remember. They had like every designer store you could imagine in the mall.
Yeah.
And in the bathroom, I open up the door to the toilet. And as soon as you open up the door, the toilet seat flips up automatically and like does this cleaning thing on top of the seat. It's like a disinfectant. It's a super light mist. It was just so beyond what I've ever seen in the United States. So we often forget what kind of technology they're exposed to in those countries.
Yeah, another thing that really stuck with me going there is the malls, man, the shopping malls. We went to, the mall culture is huge there. We went to a lot of different malls, and their malls are so much nicer than the majority of malls I've been to, at least in my subjective experience here in California. I mean, we're ripping this pod right now in Oakdale, and the nearest mall is about 30 minutes away in Modesto. And, you know, you think the Philippines, you know, whatever, it's like, what mall's there? Oh boy, I don't even want to go there. The malls in the Philippines, where we were, Manila specifically, they are head and shoulders 10 times nicer than our nearest mall here. Like, you can get, you know, you might get shot in the parking lot at the mall here. It's like, you know, you go to the malls there and it's just, it's beautiful. It's clean. All the different stores, the high-end luxury stores they have, just the people in general, they're friendly and they give you the time of day. And that just blew me away, the mall culture there, and seeing the extent of how well they keep those malls and the buildings and the restaurants in them. It was amazing to me. I wasn't expecting that, you know, I'll be honest.
It was definitely one of those things, wow, where when we were there, it didn't quite make sense to us as much as it does now being back in the States, and how those malls and that consumerism mindset is really popular in the Philippines, which I didn't know going there. I thought that consumerism was more popular in the United States, whereas now looking at our experience in the Philippines, I think that consumerism is way more popular in the United States, and businesses and other corporations know that because there's an emerging economy there, that they should prioritize having stores in the Philippines. I remember looking at some of the stores that were there and being absolutely shocked, like Wolf Appliances, a very high-end company that's in high-end homes.
Every company you can think of.
Gucci, there was Gucci everywhere.
Like hotels in their mall. They had like 5-star restaurants in their malls.
Yeah, they had like swimming pools, ice skating rinks, archery. They had all of these activities and services in their malls, movie theaters. You keep going on. And consumerism was very centralized, which in the United States, we operate on a lot of e-commerce, Amazon, where people are shipping products and whatnot. Where they like to go and experience the shopping, window shopping, going to the malls, finding the products, holding them. So yeah, I never really seen that consumerism experience like I had in the Philippines. And I'm sure I'll keep experiencing that in other countries that I go to. But that was one thing that really stuck out to me in terms of what I thought going into the Philippines versus what I experienced.
Looking back on the trip, what are some other cultural differences that we noticed, cultural shocks, just things that we didn't expect going into it? One thing for me was how many police officers there were.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, every police officer has like, you know, a rifle, a shotgun, wherever, just everywhere. That was a shock to me, because there's a stigma, you know, towards police officers in America, right? That, you know, they're always wearing their bulletproof vests and they're locked and loaded at all times. And you go to the Philippines and every police officer you see is locked and loaded, ready to roll. That was crazy for me to see.
I felt safe because there was a police officer at every corner. Now, I don't know the dynamics between how many of those police officers were government and how many of them were private security, but from what I've heard, the Philippines is very safe across the board, because they do have this expectation from their citizens to maintain a developing mindset. I don't remember a lot of homeless in most of the cities. There were parts that were a lot like socioeconomically in a tougher situation than a lot of the other city. But there weren't a lot of people out begging, asking for handouts, which is something that's different than the United States. I think that there's something to be said about the culture in the Philippines, in that they really try to keep a tribe mentality around their family and their close friends. They might spend their entire life within a 5-minute proximity of their closest relatives, and they're able to pool their resources together and work together to survive and maintain that tribe lifestyle.
The togetherness is big there.
Family
Family is important, and something you don't really see in America, I'd say, as much, at least.
Yeah, in the United States, it seems like people want to get out of their home. They want to get out of their hometown. And I think that that's actually from the narrative that's being pushed in the United States, where individualism is more important than family, and not just family in terms of mom, dad, brother, sister, family in terms of
grandma, grandpa,
grandpa, aunt,
extended
uncles,
family, yeah.
cousins, second cousins, and really pulling that together, which is something you see in the Philippines. And I admire that because I think that the United States needs more of that. The narrative that's been told to the people in the United States is mom, dad, brother, sister. As soon as they're 18, they go out and they figure it out on their own. Where in the Philippines, they have compounds with family members that they may not even be super close to. It might be a third or fourth cousin, but they call them their cousin.
Yeah.
And they're there living with them.
Yeah.
So,
and what you see is a support system that's built around a bunch of different skill sets, right? You might have one family member that's good at a certain thing, another family that's good at something else, and they bring all these resources together, and it makes their family structure strong and sustainable. That was just kind of cool to see. Like, I know we have people on our team that really prioritize helping their family and financially, emotionally, whatever it might be. There's just a different level of care towards their family members that I wish we had a little bit more of here in the States, right? That was cool to see.
yeah, it's definitely more of a giving culture, and most importantly, giving back to your family, which like you said, I wish we had that more in the United States.
It's respect. It comes down to respect on a lot of levels. And we saw a lot of met a lot of very respectful people, and that's something that culture over there stresses a lot, respect. And what were the two, here we might say man or dude when you're referencing an elder. What do they call it? Kuya.
Kuya and ate.
Kuya and ate. Yeah, there's this level of respect towards everybody you see. That was really refreshing to see.
Yeah, it really was. When we decided to go to the Philippines, and we really didn't have much of a plan other than, these were the days that we were going to hang out with the team.
Yeah.
What did you expect? And then what did we end up doing?
I really didn't know what to expect. It was a little, I'll admit, nerve-wracking, because these are people that we have been working with for quite a while at this point. And, you have a certain relationship with them through a screen, but then meeting them in person is a whole other animal, right?
Right.
You're going to get to know their personality, what they like, what they don't like. And sometimes you can meet people in person and you figure out that they're entirely different than kind of what you expected at that point.
Oh, yeah.
And it was just so cool meeting each person. I mean, I think there was 9 people in total. One of our guys from India, one of our editors, he also came. It was kind of cool because we kind of met up with each person individually. Like the first time we arrived, we met up with Art, and then a day or two later we met up with somebody else, and then somebody else, and it was like kind of dramatic, this build up, right? We filmed it all. That was really cool. And the cool thing is, there wasn't one person we met on the team where we were like, okay, yeah, this person's way different than what we thought they were going to be, rubbed the wrong way. Just no bueno. And that wasn't the case at all. Each person we met, we got to know their backstory. We got to know what they like, what they don't like. It was a really cool experience in that regard. But in terms of like what we were going to be doing, I figured we'd be hanging out, maybe a little partying, which we did do one night at the club in Boracay, and that was really fun. Rest in peace, Karthik, my friend. I'll show some pictures of that if he allows it. But yeah, it was really cool. And I think that's really important regardless of what business you're in. Obviously, if it's like a huge business, you have thousands of employees or whatever, it's a little hard to do. But smaller businesses like ours, it's really important if you want to strengthen your just overall morale, your operations, to build more of a familial kind of feel, right? And that was something that I think that we accomplished. I can't speak for everyone on the trip, but at least for me personally, it's like I felt so much closer after leaving the Philippines to those people, to our team members,
I remember when we first got there being like a little bit uncomfortable because we were in their country and we wanted to bring a good experience, but also we didn't really know what their cultural norms were, their cultural expectations. And then once you start to hang out with them, you're just like, oh, you guys see the same stuff we do on the internet. Sure. We have the same experiences online.
Same access to information.
The same access to information. So we really just vibed from the get-go. And
it was fun, man.
was
Lots
so
of
fun.
laughs and
yeah.
oh man, the dinners and oh man.
Oh, we did so much from being in the city when we first got there to then going out to the more mountainous regions. To a volcano and to this lake.
The city kind of made me a little bit anxious. I don't know about you, but for people listening, it's like Manila, the capital city there. It is like how many times bigger than LA? 10 times?
Yeah,
8
about 10 times bigger.
9 million
It's
people
huge.
or something like
13
that.
million people.
The traffic is atrocious. I will say that. Like the Philippines, your guys' traffic sucks, and I hated every second of that. But it was just very compact and congested, and that for me personally was a little anxiety provoking, right?
Oh, for sure. We were in the car quite a bit too, whether we were touring the cities, the different, they have, what do they call them? They have different like sub cities within the cities. I'm totally spacing on the name right now, but they have these different municipalities within the major city of Manila. And so each city represented a different type of person, a different market, really.
Socioeconomic status.
Yeah. There were bigger malls. Maybe this was like the arts district or this was the finance district. So that was cool to see within the Philippines. There were a lot of people, and our people that work there, they get to experience a wide variety of cultures and also socioeconomic experiences that people in the United States might not have exposure to, which is something that I also think is really unique about the Philippines. There are people in the United States that don't know what the upper class lifestyle looks like or what poverty might look like. But in the Philippines, you walk down a lot of the streets and you see the upper class, the higher net worth individuals, and you also see the people who are struggling on the streets.
Like right next door.
Right
in
next
some
door.
cases.
And
The contrast was crazy in a lot of cases. Yeah.
It was.
I
What was where were we staying? There was one place where we stayed where we really saw.
It was Boracay, a resort in Boracay.
Okay.
If I'm thinking about the one you are. We were at this nice resort and right on the beach, super beautiful. And literally like right next door, like right out our window, there was this, a house, chickens everywhere. Definitely run down, right? And you can tell it was impoverished. But just the contrast between where we were staying and where this property was. I mean, it actually rubbed some guests the wrong way. They weren't with us. I think they were from like England or
he
something.
was from Britain.
Britain.
He was an absolute dick.
Yeah, we were in the lobby and he was complaining.
Okay, so this guy, and at this point we had been there for 4 weeks. We were so immersed in the culture. I was like falling in love with every bit of the Philippines. And this guy at this resort, this really high-end resort, he was complaining at the front desk that you could hear the chickens in the morning. And I was listening to him complain, and I just remember thinking to myself, like, bro, I can hear the chickens in the morning in California. It's actually really nice to hear the chickens. And maybe if you got out of bed before 8 a.m., you would understand, or maybe take into consideration that
that's their livelihood.
It's their livelihood.
Yeah.
Where the resort is sitting was probably on top of indigenous land.
They were there first.
They were there first. Let them live their life. Who cares that you hear chickens? It sounds cool.
Yeah.
Take it as part of the experience.
This dude was literally asking the manager if they could go ask the people next door if they can move their chickens.
Yeah, he did.
Remember that? He's like, can you just go ask them if they can like put their chickens away or something?
Yeah.
And he's like,
It
or if
showed
not,
me how detached. It showed me how detached some people are from reality, but also from understanding that there are other cultures who have these cultural standards, operations, whatever you want to call them, that a lot of people who live in a higher end lifestyle just think it's okay to change. And I don't think that that's the way that we should be looking at it. I think that guy should have understood what he was getting himself into and embraced the experience, because we had a very similar spot and we thought it was the coolest thing ever. We had video looking at it thinking, holy cow, this is so cool. Their village is right next door to this resort, and they're still maintaining the same lifestyle that they want to maintain.
Another thing that I think we appreciated a lot is just the general beauty of the Philippines, the nature, the forest, the oceans, the beaches. That was really cool. That was like, it was amazing. Like swimming, we did a lot of like snorkeling. We did like a booze cruise with the team kind of deal. That was really fun. Gosh, what else did we do? We were there for so long. It's like it was kind of all a blur.
I would say that the biggest thing that impacted me leaving the Philippines was that when you look at the way that they're living and the way that the United States and our company engages with the Philippines, you see that the people that are living there who are working towards a future career, whether they're working for a company in the Philippines or in the United States, they have so much opportunity. And it's really inspiring here in the United States to look at what they're doing in the Philippines, look at what they're doing in other emerging economies. I mean, we're about to go to Malaysia here in a couple of days to check out Malaysia and really explore what Malaysia's up to and how they're, becoming part of the future global economy. It's exciting to see that the people are excited. Mm-hmm. The people are excited to converse, get on Zooms, meet up in person, build those relationships. We're in Malaysia. I'm going to stop in the Philippines for a couple of days, meet up with some of our team members, go out, have a good time, live as if they're living within my local community, because the access to people in other countries, the access to travel is becoming much more obtainable, whereas in the future, it wasn't the case. So you had to do business in your backyard. I think it's important that we continue to support the businesses in our backyard, but if you can continue to build a company both in your backyard and in an emerging economy, I think that that's something that we're going to continue to do and that we're excited to do, because it's really cool to see someone go from one place in their environment, in their market, to becoming someone completely different, having the flexibility of someone in the United States who's working for a major corporation. I'm looking forward to see what development we have in the Philippines, see what type of lifestyle people can acquire working with us.
Mm-hmm. Special trip for sure. And definitely want to go back for the food too, as well. I mean, that's something we didn't talk about at all, but oh my God.
Goodness.
Definitely gained probably 15 pounds on the trip. Yeah, no, beautiful trip, beautiful people, and one of those once in a lifetime experiences that I'll definitely be grateful for forever, and I hope that people here in the States stop kind of seeing countries that are less developed. I wish that they would educate themselves in terms of either seeing it or reading about it, and so they don't automatically write these countries off as dangerous, all impoverished, all one way, right? Black and white. That's just not how it is. And I think people, if they educate themselves a little bit more on different cultures and whatnot, if they're able to, that's going to benefit them in the long run in a lot of different ways, intellectually, socially, in a lot of intrinsic ways. The world will open itself up to them in a lot of ways. So very grateful for that trip.
I think that what we're doing, having these conversations, is important because Scaling Creator, our podcast, it really aims to give our listeners the framework to self-discovery and also the business skills that are neglected by our current system. I think a lot of what we're experiencing is something that's left out by our current system. And I've been able to tap into the institutions. I'm constantly looking at what are the institutions talking about? What are the business schools talking about? I want to make sure that what we're talking about is one step beyond what is currently being talked about here in the United States, because in 3 or 4 years from now, there are going to be 3 or 4 times as many businesses working with people in the Philippines. We want to talk about the stories and give people a range of experiences that teach them how to be unapologetically true to themselves, right? That's huge. What we learned in the Philippines made me more of a human than I would have ever experienced here in the United States. I got experience working with people, living with them, watching them live their lifestyles that I never would have gotten with, or never would have achieved here in the United States. And then we're tapping into the conversation around scaling from the current version of you, which in this situation was us going to the Philippines and realizing that we had no perspective compared to when we left. And we understand that as a creator, our job is to just listen, adopt what the culture is talking about, what the culture is experiencing, and come home and have those conversations about what we experience, and also try and open up people to having the conversations about what they might perceive when they go overseas.
Yeah, it strengthens your arsenal as a storyteller. The more experiences, the more perspectives you can gather, that's only going to benefit you in the long run as a creative.
So if you enjoyed what you listened to here on the Scaling Creator podcast, share this episode. Check us out on all the major platforms. Check us out at scalingcreator.com. Join us on our Discord community, and we'll see you on the next episode.